The Pentagon deception was successful for a multitude of reasons, the primary one being confusion. We have enough evidence now to help untangle this complex web to shed light on how this deception was carried out so successfully in broad daylight. There are 3 planes acting in the lead roles of this saga. It is necessary to scrutinize the details surrounding each, primarily looking at their various flight paths. The planes in question are: Number 1, the decoy jet. This was the jet that flew treetop level over Arlington and then north of the former Citgo gas station, timed perfectly with the explosion at the Pentagon to create the illusion that it hit the building. We have previously released information demonstrating how this plane could not have been Flight 77. This is mostly evident due to the fact that the plane did not look like an American airline jet, according to most of the previously unknown witnesses we could find in the area. We will present additional evidence in this presentation showing you how this plane had a completely different flight path from what was released in the 2006 NTSB data that allegedly came from Flight 77's black box, as well as the 2007 released 84th Radar Evaluation Squadron, or 84 RAIDS data, which officially documents radar. It was clearly part of the plan to be able to say this was a different plane than Flight 77, so it was important to have it not look like an AA jet and to have it not fly exactly where they claim Flight 77 flew, but close enough to fool people on the alleged impact side into believing it hit the building. Number 2, the C-130 piloted by Lieutenant Colonel Steve O'Brien. There is a lot of speculation surrounding the role of this plane in the event. Despite the flight path depicted in the 2007 released RAIDS data, and despite the fact that at least one eyewitness specifically claims that this plane was shadowing or chasing AA-77 and was flying away and over the Pentagon as AA-77 allegedly plunged into the Pentagon, C.I.T. has documented all the pilot's statements and has received direct email dialogue with him to determine his true flight path, which is in direct contradiction to what was reported by 84 RAIDS and the shadowing claim. We have determined that the very real C-130 has been deliberately yet ambiguously attributed to a very fake flight path in order to serve as a cover story for anyone who may have seen the decoy jet fly away from the Pentagon. They could effectively refer to the C-130 as a second plane in the area, since most people aren't familiar with what a C-130 looks like anyway. Number 3, the white E-4B or Doomsday plane seen circling the White House. This plane was the cover story for the cover story. When the mileage on the C-130 second plane cover story ran out, it was clear that the E-4B would be the next ambiguous mystery plane that would be left floating out there to continue to foster confusion. It has been clouded in mystery and speculation even after it was positively identified by CNN from their video footage that they presented in a September 2007 news piece. Its existence has never been officially acknowledged, although the plane was very visible in the skies of Washington, D.C. around the time of the attack and caused quite a stir. Because the decoy jet has also been identified as white, and because the new evidence that we present shows a flight path of the decoy approaching from the same skies as the E-4B, it is now quite clear to us that, like the C-130, the E-4B was also meant to ambiguously serve as cover for the decoy jet. In fact, the late Joe Vials had referred to the E-4B seen on a BBC News report as if it was proof of Flight 77. The fact that people had to rely on poor quality footage of an E-4B as supposed proof of Flight 77's existence speaks volumes. The blending of reports is clear. In other words, the authorities and ultimately skeptics would be able to write off the decoy jet as the E-4B. However, with the 2007 release of the 84 RAIDS data, the officials are now held to their word as far as the flight path and now reported 9:43 takeoff time of the E-4B. Any plane that was reported before that time or before the attack can no longer be written off as the E-4B. In this presentation, we will demonstrate how numerous sources, including ABC News, the NORAD tapes, the C-130 pilot, Transportation Secretary Norman Mineta and Deputy Director of the FAA Monty Belger, as well as an independent, previously unknown eyewitness account that we have obtained, all describe a plane that they believe hit the Pentagon, but was far from the NTSB black box data flight path, and all before the E-4B reportedly took off. We have already established in the Pentagon smoking gun version how the plane that was meant to fool people into believing it hit the building could not have actually hit because it was on the north side of the former C.I.T gas station, far from the light poles and the trajectory of all the physical damage. We have also established in our video short, Flight 77, the White Plane, how a majority of the genuine witnesses we found in the neighborhoods of Arlington describe this plane as white, so that it could not have been American Airlines Flight 77. All of this evidence can be viewed for free on our website, thepentagon.com, if you haven't seen it yet. Another little-known factor that helped enable this deception to be so successful was the complex topography of the area, with the Pentagon at the bottom of a hill right next to the Potomac River and Reagan National Airport. The common misconception is that the Pentagon is in Washington, D.C., which is a tourist town, and would have potentially thousands of witnesses to the entire event. The Pentagon is actually across the river from D.C. in Arlington, which is not a tourist town. None of the homes in the neighborhoods of Arlington along the flight path have a view of the Pentagon at all. Only some of the high-rises in Crystal City would have a view of the event, and because they are far away from the flight path, people in those buildings would not be alerted to the event in advance by hearing the jet, and most would only be alerted after the massive explosion and fireball. At that point, the plane would already be moving fast away from the scene, blended with regular departures out of Reagan National Airport. Because of the steep decline in the topography after the Navy Annex, and because of a line of tall trees just in front of it, it's not until you are literally on the former C.I.T gas station property and FOB parking lot before you would have a good view of the impact side of the Pentagon where it meets the ground. Also, due to the official trajectory of the plane in relation to the topography, there is less than a quarter-mile stretch of Route 27 in front of the alleged impact side where people would be physically able to actually see the plane enter the building on the official flight path. The fact that the Pentagon is next door to Reagan National Airport was also key to the success of this operation. People who have been to the area know that there are passenger jets approaching and departing Reagan every 2 to 4 minutes, 24 hours a day. Low-flying large jets making a steep ascent over the Potomac River right next to the Pentagon is a very common sight. Even if somebody witnessed the decoy jet making its getaway over the Potomac immediately after the explosion, there would be no way to determine whether or not it was a regular departure out of Reagan. Certainly, the massive explosion, fireball, and smoke plume would serve as an effective diversion from the extremely common sight of a passenger jet ascending over the river. Let's deconstruct the details surrounding the various planes involved in this operation. According to the dubious radar data released by 84 Raids, Lieutenant Colonel Steve O'Brien, the pilot of the C-130, took off from Andrews Air Force Base at 9:32 despite the fact that National Ground Stop restricting the takeoff of all civilian, military, and law enforcement planes was implemented by the FAA at 9:26. Somebody clearly wanted to make sure this plane took off and that the crew was kept in the dark, because amazingly, O'Brien claims he was not even made aware of the fact that our country was under attack in New York until after he flew over the rising smoke at the Pentagon. According to his original account, he traveled north and west from Andrews Air Force Base, which took him by the Washington Mall.
When we took off, we headed north and west and had a beautiful view of the mall.
In the BBC documentary 9/11 Conspiracy Files, he stated,
"We departed out of Andrews and climbed to 3,000 feet, which took us by the south side of the mall.
And we received additional confirmation through an email dialogue with him.
Our first sighting of the AA flight was just after we had gone by the mall westbound.
So here we have the C-130 having gone just by the mall heading westbound when he first saw the decoy jet up and to the left of him.
I noticed this airplane up and to the left of us at 10 o'clock. He was descending to our altitude 4 miles away or so. That's awful close. I was surprised he wasn't calling out to us. It was like coming up to an intersection.
In another account,
we were at about 3,500 feet at the time that I first noticed this commercial airliner in our 12 o'clock position in about a 45-degree bank, which is unusual for a large aircraft to be descending and turning at a 45-degree bank turn like that. So that really got our attention.
he describes the full approach of this plane that was coming from his left in the BBC documentary. It is important to remember that he was traveling westbound and had just gone by the Washington Mall.
And as he moved to our 11 o'clock position, he started his turn, and by the time he got to our 12 o'clock position, right out the front of the aircraft, he was rolled up into about, I would estimate, 30 to 40 degrees of bank, which is considerable for a commercial airline.
If that wasn't enough, he once again confirmed this through email dialogue we received.
The 30 to 45 degree bank I described was always in reference to the AA flight during its initial pass across our flight path when it turned from a northerly heading to an eastbound heading.
So the C-130 had just gone by the mall headed westbound when he first saw the plane up and to his left, descending to his altitude at 10, 11, and then 12 o'clock, like he was coming up to an intersection. It was in a 30 to 45 degree bank, headed from what was at that point a northerly heading to an eastbound heading. It would have passed them on the right-hand side, descending below them, which is exactly what C-130 crew member Major Robert Schumacher reported.
I remember looking out my right side windows, kind of down on it.
Right away, O'Brien's own description of where he flew contradicts the 84 raids data, which has him traveling southwest out of Andrews as opposed to north and west. Plus, O'Brien's description of the location of the decoy jet also contradicts the raids data, as well as the official flight path indicated by the NTSB from the alleged black box. We'll come back to the C-130 in just a moment, but for now let's focus on the flight path of the decoy jet. After it passed the C-130, it was picked up by FAA Deputy Director Monty Belger, who reports his position to Secretary of Transportation Norman Mineta, as he relayed in this NBC News interview with Robert Hager.
So then someone came in. The same person came in and said, "Mr. Vice President, the plane's 30 miles out." So I said, "Monty, can you see it? And where is it in relationship to the ground?" He said, "Well, that's difficult to really determine. I would guess it's somewhere between Great Falls and National Airport, coming what they call the DRA, the downriver approach." So I said, "Monty, where is it?" And he said, "Well, I'm not really sure, but I'd be guessing somewhere maybe between the USA Today building and National Airport." Well, the question was, where is it coming? And so as I was asking Monty, it was following pretty much the DRA, the downriver approach, and it had not crossed over towards the White House or towards the Capitol. It was staying on its line towards what would normally be the traffic pattern into National Airport. And in fact, later on, in looking at the radar track, the plane had actually overpassed the Pentagon, then turned around and then came back into it, and it never took a wide sweep to cross over to the east side of the White House.
The downriver approach is irreconcilable with the NTSB flight path that never has the plane near the river or on that course at all. So Monty Belger tracked the plane near Roslyn, or the old USA Today building. This is exactly where the C-130 pilot first reports seeing the decoy jet. Mineta did not think that it had crossed the river, but according to eyewitnesses, news reports, and even air traffic controller Colin Scoggins, the plane did exactly that, actually crossing the Potomac and flying into P-56, the restricted airspace surrounding the White House in Washington, D.C. Here is a list of other people who also reported a plane they believed to be what hit the Pentagon as flying over D.C. airspace.
The plane had been seen making a lazy pattern in the no-fly zone over the White House and U.S. Capitol. Why the plane did not hit incoming traffic coming down the river from the north to Reagan National is beyond me. I saw it go overhead, the plane. There wasn't anything in the air except for one airplane, and it looked like it was loitering over Georgetown in a high left-hand bank, he said. That may have been the plane. I've never seen one on that flight pattern. Georgetown is a sector of the District of Columbia jammed with shops and restaurants. It's one of the city's most vital tourist draws. Commercial aircraft that are either approaching or departing from nearby Ronald Reagan National Airport do not fly over Georgetown, and rather trace their flight route over the nearby Potomac River. As I was looking across the river towards the direction of the Pentagon, I noticed a large aircraft flying low towards the White House. This aircraft then made a sharp turn and flew towards the Pentagon. I saw the plane that hit the Pentagon. It went behind some trees. Later we were told that it was a 757 out of Dulles, which had come up the river in back of our building, turned sharply over the Capitol, ran past the White House and the Washington Monument, up the river to Roslyn, then dropped to treetop level and ran down Washington Boulevard to the Pentagon.
None of these people were in a position to see the plane on the official flight path, and all report the plane in DC skies. Air traffic controller Colin Scoggins then reported the plane being 6 miles southeast of the White House. This of course meaning the plane crossed over the Potomac River, placing it on the east side of the river, far off course from the NTSB and 84 Raid's flight path.
HFID is coming out. Can I help you?
Latest report, aircraft VFR 6 miles southeast of the White House.
6 miles southeast of the White House?
Yep, east. He's moving away?
Southeast of the White House?
Aircraft is moving away.
Citizen investigation team found a key smoking gun witness who saw the plane approach from the same area that Colin Scoggins reported was 6 miles southeast of the White House. His name is Steve Chaconis. Steve is a charter boat captain who was on the Potomac River bass fishing with clients on 9/11 just south of the airport. As someone who was on the river every day, he's quite familiar with the regular air traffic patterns and was in a very unique and important position to report on the flight path of the decoy jet. We had the opportunity to interview Steve on his boat in the exact location on the river where he saw the plane.
We're in Washington, D.C. waters, and we're at the site of Blue Plains Sewage Treatment Plant, which is just south of Washington, D.C. itself. Straight ahead of us or behind me is Washington Reagan National Airport, and if you look further north, you can actually see Washington, D.C. I was out here fishing at the sewage treatment plant on September 11th, and we had heard that through phone conversations that New York had been attacked. And out on this part of the river, planes fly up and down the river, north and south, depending on which direction the wind's coming from. But they make their flight path right over the Potomac River, and they're usually about 2.5 to 3.5 minutes apart. Well, all of a sudden we realized, I guess it was about 9 o'clock or so, we realized that the planes had stopped, and we didn't really see anything. So we kind of were looking up towards the sky, just looking around while we were fishing. And that's when we kind of noticed that there was a plane coming out of the east sky. And normally planes would be coming north and south, but this plane was coming out of the east. It kind of made a circle over the river, headed back north, and as it went down right past National Airport. Kind of almost looked like it was approaching for a landing, but then we saw black smoke. At that time I thought maybe it had hit the airport, and maybe there were passengers in the water, and maybe there was something that we could do to help. So we strapped everything down and we headed over there. And as we got closer to the airport, we realized it wasn't the airport, and it was somewhere on the other side of the airport. And it was just a matter of a few seconds after that we were already towards the Pentagon Lagoon at Columbia Island, and we saw the smoke, and it was attributed to the Pentagon itself.
Can you tell us approximately how high the plane seemed to you as it was coming up over the east?
By the time the planes get to this part of the river, they're usually fairly low. They're making the approach for landing. This plane was a little bit higher than some of the other planes, but still wasn't that much higher than what I would consider to be normal. So it was coming in to where we could get a pretty good look at and see that it was a plane and kind of see what it was doing. But then again, there are no runways that run east-west, so I was a little bit kind of perturbed at that time that something was wrong. that this plane was not making the typical kind of approach to the runway.
Well, here's a plane making the typical approach right here. I don't know if we can see that. Here we go. Blue bottom, white plane, headed right towards landing at Reagan National. Now that's the regular approach of planes. They do that all day long, right?
They do that all day long. About every 2.5 to 3.5 minutes, we'll see planes coming and going. If the wind is blowing out of the north, the planes will fly into the north. They'll take off into the north. If the wind is coming out of the south, they'll fly into the south. They'll also land into the wind towards the south. This particular plane was not coming down this flight path. That particular plane was coming off the sky over here to the right and was making an approach right about where that plane is now. Is about where that plane, except it was much higher. It was much higher, and then it kind of banked in towards the airport.
Bank? Did you see it bank?
Yeah, we saw it. We kind of saw it bank and make a turn. To me, it looked like it was getting ready to land. And then from here, you can't really see the planes touch down from here, but you get pretty close. And what we saw was past all the buildings. So we kind of lost perspective as to exactly where it was touching down. I thought it was that it came close to the airport, or came close because there's also water on the other side of the runway. I thought it had run off the runway, that maybe there was somebody in the water.
Okay.
What kind of bank did you see it in when you saw it approach from the east?
When it approached from the east, it kind of banked. As it came across the river, it banked and then went down towards the airport. So it made a I guess a right-hand bank and then kind of leveled off and went down.
Approximately how long of a period of time do you think it was from when you first saw the plane until you saw the smoke rising?
Probably it was about 2 or 3 minutes from the time that we noticed the plane till it crossed the river, till it made the bank and it went down, and then we saw the smoke. So it was about 3 minutes while that plane was in the air, which is, again, it seemed like it was pretty much normal, but not normal on that particular day.
Would you say it was coming? So it was coming from D.C., the D.C. area, essentially.
Well,
say that it flew over D.C.
Well, it looked like, yeah, it looked like it could have flown over D.C. That was coming out of the east. Now, whether it was the northeast or the southeast, we couldn't tell, but it was probably more northeast towards the district than it was southeast from where we are here on the water. From the south, it would have come this way. Southeast would have been here. Northeast is where we saw that plane come around and make that turn.
Now, what's the possibility that the plane you saw was a different plane than actually allegedly hit the Pentagon?
Well, I don't know, because we didn't actually see the plane hit the ground. What we saw was a plane turn. We saw a plane aim towards the airport, make a descent like it was going to the airport, and within a few seconds we saw black smoke come up. We couldn't hear anything. As you can hear here, it's pretty loud here pretty much all day long. You can't hear anything, so we didn't hear any explosion. We didn't hear any kind of impact.
Okay. How far out did you say it went, west or southwest? How far back that way did it go when it turned around and come back around?
It made a pretty big loop over there. It went, from my guess, it went over Crystal City. It went over Crystal City, which is Arlington, and then made a turn back.
When it turned back to go this way towards the Pentagon, how far out would you say it went this way?
Well, it didn't go much this way. It went that way, and I'd say it probably went a mile or two that way, and then made the turn back. And that's when I thought it was coming down to make a landing, because we saw it head west. It was heading west from the east, went across, made that bank, and came back down. And from this angle, you really can't tell, you don't get a good perspective as to where the planes are and how they land, because they're coming, further over across the river usually. They usually don't fly over this particular part of the river.
So does the fact that, number one, it was off the normal flight path, and number two, you said it was quiet, that there was all of a sudden no air traffic at all for a while.
We had received phone calls from people telling us that something had happened in New York. And when we got that, that's when we started to pay attention that, gee, there aren't any planes flying over. There aren't any coming. And it was a fairly quiet, calm day. It wasn't really windy like it is today. So we're looking, we didn't see any planes. And so anything that was up in the air kind of caught our attention. And I think I remember later on that day seeing jets, military jets flying over, again, because they made a different sound and we were hearing them in a different part of the river.
Now, can you describe the jet for us? Did you, first of all, did you notice how many engines it had? Like,
No, I don't recall anything very specific about the airplane, and it was far enough away to where to me it looked like just a commercial airliner. Didn't look like anything else. Just looked like a normal commercial airliner that kind we see land and take off every 3.5 minutes out here on the water.
How about the color, though?
Nothing specific about it at all.
Okay. That's something else. So then you said after you saw the explosion, what did you do then?
Well, what we saw, we didn't see the explosion per se. What we did see was the black smoke.
Okay.
And what we did at that time is we had realized that a plane had gone down. That was what we figured out had happened. We said, a plane has gone down.
Now, did you instantly think it was the plane that you saw?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. We thought the plane that we had seen coming out of the west sky, that when it made its bank and made the approach, for some reason or another, whether it's pilot error or intentional, we felt that there was a plane down. And again, this airport is right on the water. It's surrounded on 3 sides by the water. If there was an opportunity to help somebody, maybe to save somebody's life that was in a plane wreck, I had agreed with my passengers that we would try to do that. We put on life jackets, strapped everything down, cleared everything off the deck, and we took off. And we went straight across the river towards the airport, kind of made a right around that point, and when we did, that's when we kind of realized it wasn't at the airport, and we figured, well, where was it? And as we rounded the corner a little bit more, we realized, hey, that's the Pentagon. That's the only thing that's in that direction. When we went in shortly after we went into the Pentagon Lagoon, a couple police boats came in. At that time, told us that there were more planes on the way. We hung out there for probably about a half an hour. Tried to make phone calls because, again, we were hearing reports on the radio that all these other buildings were on fire. And we could see, you could see the Washington Monument. You could see the Capitol building over there. You could see some of the buildings that they said were on fire on the radio. And local broadcast media did a horrible job in reporting the events of that day. It was very inaccurate, which kind of like, today, do we really know what happened? Because the media surely didn't know that day as it was happening, and here we are, years later, still questioning, what really went on that day.
Wow. Okay. Well, since you went over to the Pentagon Lagoon, and that's where the rest of your experience was, is it okay if we go over there to finish the interview?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So here we were. We saw what we thought was a plane go down. We rushed towards the airport, and within a matter of like 2 or 3 minutes, we were here. And when we got here, we saw the smoke. We saw that definitely that was coming from the Pentagon. We saw people running out of the building, and they were leaving in an orderly fashion. And within like a few seconds after we got here, we heard a secondary explosion. I don't know what it was, but everybody came pouring out of the building, really running out of the building, trying to get down to the water, trying to move over to the highway, just moving out of the Pentagon. It was total chaos. Within a few minutes after we were here, a couple police boats came in here and told us that there were other planes on the way and that we were under attack and that all the other buildings had been hit. And so it was really a freaky day, but we could see the highway. And right now you can see the traffic on the highway here is moving pretty briskly. But back then on September 11th, it was at a standstill, bumper to bumper, people out of their cars, walking around, trying to figure out what was going on, listening to the radio reports, seeing the fire itself, seeing people running out of the Pentagon, and not really understanding what was going on because we didn't have any information.
How long did it take for you to get over here before you heard that explosion?
I think probably from the time we left the sewage treatment plant to here was probably about 4 minutes. Within about 4 minutes, we were able to get from the sewage treatment plant right here to the Pentagon Lagoon. And right when we kind of pulled into the entrance, we heard the explosion. And that's when people who were walking out of the building started to run out of the building.
And you're 100% sure that it came from the east side of the Potomac?
Absolutely. That the plane that I saw, we saw it coming from the east side of the Potomac, flying into the west towards Arlington, kind of make a bank to the right, turn towards National Airport. From our perspective, it looked like it was going to land, but obviously we were incorrect. It actually went a little bit west of National Airport and went in and came down and hit the other side of the Pentagon, which is basically straight here in front of us.
Steve, in 2006, just last year, well, actually for quite a long time, people have speculated about the path of the plane, and many of them described what you what you just described to us. And in fact, we've heard about it through people like Norman Mineta and Monty Belger, who was the head of FAA. They tracked the plane coming in that same direction. So we have a lot of reason to believe what you're talking about is 100% true, and no reason to doubt it, except for the fact that in 2006, last year, the NTSB released the flight data recorder that allegedly came from Flight 77 that they found recovered from the Pentagon after the attack. So the data shows us allegedly exactly where the plane flew. Now this is their image right here. They show a loop of the path. Now here's the Pentagon. We're on the Potomac. You were here. They say,
yeah, I was right about here.
Right. So they're claiming it came from
here,
the west, did a loop, never ever was on the east side of the Potomac at all, and then flew into the Pentagon and did the loop over Arlington and Alexandria.
Yeah, see the plane that I saw made this loop right here, made this loop and made a turn back this way, just like this, came across the river, came from this direction, came around, made the loop back towards the Pentagon. I don't know about that plane or where it came from. That's not what I saw.
Okay.
As you can see that point. That's exactly where I was right there. And what we saw was a plane coming from about this direction, right about here, came around, and then it made that bank right turn. And I thought it was coming down to land here at the airport, which is this point right here. But apparently it went straight this way and went in for the landing at the Pentagon.
So you would say that diagram is not accurate as to what you saw?
Not, from what I saw, no. I can only tell you what I saw. I can't tell you what the black box said. I was out there fishing. Plane stopped flying around. The one plane I did notice that was in the sky, crossed the river, made a bank down what I thought was towards the airport, which would have been right here, kind of in the same line of sight that I was from here to here, made that bank, and then next thing I saw was a plane go out of view and then black smoke come up.
And probably the biggest reason why you believe that was the plane that allegedly hit the building is because the traffic had stopped.
There had been no air traffic, and that is very unique here. With airplanes coming over every 2.5 to 3.5 minutes, flying north and south on the Potomac River, to see one cross the river like that was out of the ordinary. And that's why it stuck out in my mind. I've been telling people about this for years. That's what we've seen, and people just sort of shrug their shoulders. But if that was the plane, that's what it did. It flew across the river, made that bank, and from my line of sight, it looked like it was right there at the airport. As we got closer to the airport, came around the corner to the lagoon, we realized that the black smoke was focused straight ahead of us right here as we entered the Pentagon Lagoon.
And the other question that there is if that wasn't the plane, then there was another plane that was drastically off course from normal air traffic that flew low across the river over Arlington, timed perfectly with the smoke plume that you saw.
Air traffic control today, the only thing I know about it today is it's a lot more rigid than it was 5 years ago. Today, you couldn't fly anywhere over the district, couldn't make that same flight. That flight would have been picked up by the radar. Back then, if they think it was another plane, that could be quite possible.
Well, let me ask you this. After you came over here to the Pentagon Lagoon or brought the boat up closer, did you notice any other planes in the skies at all?
No. Later on, shortly after that, I did notice military jets, some helicopters, some police boats did arrive shortly after we did. But there were military fighter jets, and they have a different sound. That sound that just went over, that to me is a commercial airliner. The jet makes a completely different sound. The military jet makes a completely different sound. Also, it was traveling a lot faster, and we had those flying overhead for probably a month afterwards.
There was reports of a military cargo plane that circled the area, as well as an E-4B, which is the doomsday plane. CNN reported on that this year, flying over the no-fly zones in the area. Did you notice anything like that?
No, I didn't notice anything else.
Okay.
Steve's account is fatal to the official story. It proves the 2006 released NTSB data and the 2007 released RAIDS data fraudulent. Steve was in a unique position to be able to notice the sudden silence in the air due to National Ground Stop. The fact that the plane that he saw come out of the east side of the Potomac River from Washington, D.C. was off the normal course of regular air traffic, and because he saw it loop around headed towards the Pentagon, timed perfectly with the explosion in smoke plume, it is quite clear that the plane he saw can be no other than the decoy jet that flew treetop level over Arlington and north of the former Citgo gas station. Steve's account alone is enough to prove a military deception on 9/11, but it has been an instrumental piece of the puzzle in putting together the entire picture of how this event was carried out. We are now more certain than ever of the critical roles played by the C-130 and the E-4B as cover. Most notably, Steve's placement of the decoy jet perfectly jives with the statements made by the C-130 pilot's description of his own flight path and interaction with the plane. We now know that after the decoy jet crossed over the Potomac River into DC, in the 30 to 45 degree bank turn that the C-130 pilot reported, it traveled downriver southeast of the White House and then turned back and crossed over the Potomac River again, leaving DC before making its final loop to the Pentagon. Although Steve could not see the Pentagon from his position on the river, the timing of the jet he saw, with the rising smoke plume and the irregular flight path that it took as it looped around the Pentagon, leaves no doubt that he could have only witnessed the decoy jet. Now let's turn our attention back to the C-130 pilot. After the decoy jet crossed in front of them in a 30 to 45 degree bank turn headed toward Washington, D.C., the C-130 continued westbound. It wasn't until 3 radio calls later that he finally turned around in an attempt to follow it as requested by air traffic control. But this was only an attempt, because by the time he turned back eastbound, essentially doing a U-turn, he could not even keep the decoy jet in sight.
There were 3 radio calls between us and Washington departure before we turned eastbound to follow the AA flight.
In another account,
I distinctly remember having a difficult time keeping the AA flight in sight after we turned back east to follow it, per a request from Washington departure control.
in fact, he was so far away and at such a high altitude that he could not even tell where or what had been hit when he saw the explosion.
When I saw the initial explosion, I was not able to see exactly where or what it had impacted, but remember trying to approximate a position to give to air traffic control. It was then that I was able to see the sun reflecting off the Potomac and the runway at Washington National, and thought to myself that the AA flight must have had some sort of IFE and was trying to make it back to National Airport.
In most reports, it is deliberately implied and even outright stated that the C-130 crew actually witnessed the plane enter the Pentagon, but he has never made this claim and has actually specifically stated that he was too far away at the time. By all estimations, the C-130 didn't reach the area over the Pentagon until about 60 seconds after the event took place. In fact, this is documented by Scott Cook, a government employee who was on the other side of the Potomac River in Washington, D.C.
As we watched the black plume gather strength, less than a minute after the explosion, directly in back of the plume, which would place it almost due west from our office, a 4-engine propeller plane, which Ray later said resembled a C-130, started a steep descent towards the Pentagon. It was coming from an odd direction. Planes don't go east-west in the area, and it was descending at a much steeper angle than most aircraft, trailing a thin, diffuse black trail from its engines. The plane reached the Pentagon at a low altitude and made a sharp left turn, passing just north of the plume and headed straight for the White House. All the while, I was sort of talking at it. "Who the hell are you? Where are you going? You're not headed for downtown." Ray and Verl watched it with me, and I was convinced it was another attack. But right over the tidal basin, at an altitude of less than 1,000 feet, it made another sharp left turn to the north and climbed rapidly. Soon it was gone, leaving only the thin black trail.
So by this account, it appears that the C-130 showed up over the Pentagon just less than 60 seconds after the explosion, as the black plume began to gather strength, as Scott Cook put it. It then crossed over the Potomac River and climbed rapidly over the tidal basin to the north. So why is there a small handful of alleged witnesses who placed the C-130 or an ambiguous second plane or jet approaching from the wrong direction, shadowing on top of or chasing the alleged impact plane while veering away over the Pentagon as soon as the explosion happens? As we have demonstrated, O'Brien has been very detailed about his flight path and what he saw on 9/11 in the variety of interviews, as well as in a direct email dialogue he had with Rob Balsamo of Pilots for 9/11 Truth. Despite this fact, news reports have ambiguously used his statements to paint a completely different picture. It's usually implied and even specifically stated that O'Brien and his crew actually witnessed the plane hit the building, or that he was chasing or shadowing AA-77 up until the alleged moment of impact. O'Brien has never made these claims, and we have shown how he has even directly contradicted them, but information of this nature is still floating around out there for confusion. We have compiled and heavily analyzed all of O'Brien's statements, and our initial determination was that his claims are irreconcilable with the 2006 released NTSB flight path and the 2007 released RAIDS data. Now that we have talked with Steve Chaconis, O'Brien's statements perfectly match with where Chaconis saw the decoy jet fly, and also with what Colin Scoggins reported. It's now clear that although O'Brien was called in to turn around and try to follow the decoy jet, he never got the chance to because the violent event already took place while he was too far out to even know that the explosion came from the Pentagon. Not to mention, we know for a fact that he would have not been physically able to follow the AA jet that was reportedly traveling 535 miles per hour because the top speed of a C-130 is only 372 miles per hour. But even the 84 RAIDS data is irreconcilable with O'Brien's accounts. They don't have him anywhere near the mall, and they make it look like he could have in fact followed AA-77 and witnessed the entire event, even though they do have him about a minute away from the Pentagon at the time of the attack. So why would some people report a second plane in the area at the exact same time as the explosion? This Daily Press article by Terry Scanlon regarding Kelly Knowles' account certainly does this.
She saw a second plane in the air over the Pentagon as a hijacked jet plunged into the five-sided military fortress. Some sort of plane followed the doomed American Airlines jet toward the Pentagon, then veered away after the explosion. Thank God somebody else saw that. There was most definitely a second plane, Knowles said. It's so frustrating because nobody knows about the second plane, or if they do, they're hiding it for some reason. A Pentagon official said late Friday no other plane was flying with the jetliner, but he said it was possible a military plane was in the area at the time of the attack.
Keith Wheelhouse also reported seeing a second plane shadow an AA jet, and he specifically called it a C-130. However, it was reported that Keith simply thought it was a C-130, but wasn't certain. So the reports of this second plane were left ambiguous as to what kind of plane it was. It should be noted that the articles breaking the story about the C-130 and these ambiguous second plane witnesses were all from reporter Terry Scanlon of the Daily Press within the first days and weeks of the event. The following article by Scanlon and David Lerman is in stark contrast to what the C-130 pilot would later report about his experience.
The crew of a military cargo plane watched helplessly on September 11th as a hijacked airliner plunged into the Pentagon, a defense official confirmed Tuesday. The report confirms the eyewitness account of two Hampton Roads residents who were near the Pentagon that day and said they saw a second plane flying near the doomed passenger jet. A C-130 cargo plane had departed Andrews Air Force Base en route to Minnesota that morning and reported seeing an airliner heading into Washington at an unusual angle, said Lieutenant Colonel Kenneth McClellan, a Pentagon spokesman. Air traffic control officials instructed the propeller-powered cargo plane to let us know where it's going, McClellan said, but he said there was no attempt to intercept the hijacked airliner. A C-130 obviously goes slower than a jet, McClellan said. There was no way he was going to intercept anything. The C-130 pilot followed the aircraft and reported it was heading into the Pentagon, he said. He saw it crash into the building. He saw the fireball. Keith Wheelhouse of Virginia Beach still has a vivid image of that fireball etched in his mind. He and several family members, including his sister Pam Young of Surrey County, were leaving a funeral at Arlington National Cemetery when they watched the hijacked American Airlines jet nosedive into the nation's military headquarters. They also saw a second plane. At first, they weren't sure whether the second plane was involved in the attack, but Wheelhouse, a 3-year Army veteran, thought it looked like a C-130, although he wasn't certain. Tuesday, he was pleased to hear the military is finally verifying what he's been telling people. Wheelhouse and at least 2 other witnesses to the Pentagon attack were troubled that Pentagon spokesmen had until now said they were unaware of a C-130 being in the area at the time. "So I wasn't losing my mind," he said. In the days immediately following the September 11th hijackings, the Pentagon had no knowledge of the C-130's encounter because all reports were classified by the Air National Guard, the Pentagon spokesman said. It was very hard to get any information out, McClellan said. Wheelhouse said the Pentagon explanation of the cargo plane's role that day makes sense. The pilot of the C-130 was unable to prevent the attack, he said. "He's in a transport plane. You watch the jumbo jet flying low, drop its nose and gun it," Wheelhouse said. "What's he gonna do?"
The statements from Lieutenant Colonel Kenneth McClellan of the Pentagon contradict what the C-130 pilot reported about his experience. Note the misleading and completely incorrect title of that article. The raid's data also contradicts what the C-130 pilot reported about his experience. Keith Wheelhouse could not have seen a C-130 over the top of Flight 77 when the pilot says he was too far from the Pentagon to even know if it was the source of the explosion. Because Keith Wheelhouse is the only witness to specifically identify the alleged shadowing second plane as a C-130, we thought it would be best to get a hold of him to see if he would confirm Terry Scanlon's report. He did. Go ahead.
All right, we're talking with Keith Wheelhouse.
Grab a seat, man.
All right, I'll sit down and talk to you too.
Okay.
What do you? So Keith, you were there on 9/11. What'd you happen to see in Arlington?
The airliner that actually hit the Pentagon.
Where were you located?
In the very back, on the lawn of Arlington Cemetery.
Arlington Cemetery?
Yeah.
Was that close to the road itself, the Citgo gas station, the lower level of?
We were actually in the, it's kind of hard to, I'm not really familiar with the layout up there, but I do know my brother-in-law had passed away and we actually buried him that morning. And we had parked our cars on the back road, the closest one to, I guess there's additional grave sites, and then it drops down to where the highway is, and then the Pentagon sits right beyond that. And that's what they call the staging area. So that's where we had parked our cars and had walked up to the gravesite, buried my brother-in-law, went back to the cars, and I was talking to a friend of his that he worked with up, I believe, out of Pittsburgh, and we'd walked up into the grass area where the grave sites were, and which we were facing the Pentagon building, and I had noticed a plane coming from my right, traveling from my right to my left, facing that wall of the Pentagon, and made the statement that he was coming in awful low, and then I noticed the C-130, the second airplane over top of it, shadowing it.
As it approached? As
it started to approach, yeah. It was a ways out, and the C-130 was actually over top of it, yeah.
How many seconds would you guess you saw it for, both of them approaching? They were approaching at the same time, then I take it.
Yeah, you know, the airliner itself was actually out in front, and the C-130 was tailing it over top of it. That was sitting back. It was probably, I'm going to say probably a good minute that I watched it come in, and not knowing the proximity to where Reagan Airport was, didn't know whether, you know, it was actually coming in to land or, you know, what was going on there. But the plane coming from my right started to come in, and as it got closer, it dropped the nose and gunned it. And I made a statement to him that he's coming in awful quick, and also that he didn't have his landing gear down. And then it just evaporated into the side of the building.
Okay. And where did the C-130 fly from that point?
From that point, as that plane started to drop and come in,
was he still kind of on top?
He was sitting back over the top of it this way, shadowing it this way. And as that plane came in, granted it came from my right to my left, banked and went that way, which I don't know the directions up there, but it went to its left and flew off.
Well, so it didn't actually fly over the Pentagon?
No, not the C-130, no.
Wanted to get an idea for your approximate location at the cemetery. So here's an overhead satellite shot. If you can see, here's the C.I.T gas station.
Right.
All right, there's the Pentagon itself. This is the Navy Annex. So all of this is Arlington Cemetery. Approximately where do you recall you were when you saw the plane?
Maybe you need to turn it around. It might even make it easier for you.
Yeah, because this would have been your perspective.
Yeah. Trying to figure out where that back road is.
Could be that silo next to the Navy.
I think this is that back road here.
Show them where the gas station's at too.
Here's the C.I.T gas station. Do you remember if you were able to see that from where you were located?
No. I don't remember that there. Where's the highway that drops down in front of it?
This is the highway in front, right in front of Route 27.
And this is where the plane hit.
Right.
I believe that's where the plane hit.
Maybe it was that side road right there next to the Navy Annex, correct?
We were back here, I believe, on this back road right here, because I think there's storage sheds or something back here that they have for the for Arlington Cemetery. I guess where they keep the equipment, where they dig the graves and such, in that very back section of it. And we had parked, I believe, here, back in here, on what we would call the staging area. And when we got back to the cars, we would walk back into the grass area here, because there's a fence back, I guess, on this section of the, there's a fence that goes around the edge of this here. And we'd walk back about 2/3 of the way up in here, and the plane was actually coming from this direction, from the right to the left.
Okay. And the C-130 as well?
The C-130 also was sitting over the top of it.
Okay.
Now, when you saw, as an estimation, you said you think you probably saw the planes. When you saw the plane initially, did you see both of them initially?
That's what you said, yeah.
I'd have to say yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And approximately how far back do you think they were at that point?
That's hard to guesstimate. They might have been maybe a mile out, half a mile out, 2/3 of a mile out.
Sure. Okay. So maybe we're out there, and so you think you saw it for approximately 60 seconds?
About 60 seconds. Yeah, it was quick. It was real quick, because I was talking to him. I glanced up and saw the planes coming, and was continuing the conversation with him, and then looked up again. I said, you know, damn, this guy's coming in awful quick. And he dropped his nose, the nose down, and when he did that, he gunned it. And then at that time, that other plane, the C-130, it banked off and went this direction.
Now your
So
best
to the west, basically.
If that's the west, yeah.
Okay.
That's
Okay,
the
now your
direction.
best approximation, here's a Sharpie marker. If you can just estimate where you saw the plane come from and to. Now again, here's the C.I.T gas station. That's the Navy Annex.
I'm trying to look at here, at this here, with where the Pentagon is actually at.
Right here is where they say it.
That's where it hit at, because I know I think there's a helipad out there too, or something.
There is, yeah.
Yeah.
The helipad was right out front.
The plane was coming from this direction here.
Okay.
And the second one was sitting over top of it,
Okay.
back here, like over top of the tail end of it.
Sure. You just trace the line all the way to the Pentagon, where you saw it fly.
Okay.
All right.
And then maybe the direction of the C-130 too.
Yeah.
On the C-130,
After.
it actually, I don't know how close it actually got, but it actually banked and headed in this direction.
Oh, okay. So it didn't make it as far as.
No, it didn't go to the Pentagon. It just, when it saw it drop its nose down and gun it, you know, I mean, about the only thing the guy could have done is set the plane down on top of it to stop it. And, you know, from that standpoint.
So it would have been like a quick, really hard bank, and just he just descended?
He just banked off and took off. But this guy here, when it started to come in, it dropped the nose gear down and just, I guess he gunned it. And, you know, when he started to come across, you know, I said, you know, damn, he ain't got no landing gear down. You know, and he ended up hitting it.
Sure.
Right, okay. Do you recall the color of the plane?
I believe it was silver. It was, if I'm not mistaken, it's been a little while. I think it was an American Airlines flight that hit it. the plane was more silver than it was anything.
So is that what you recognized it as? Or?
Yeah, I mean, it was a silver plane that came in, mainly silver, which was, I believe it was an American Airlines flight that actually hit it. So.
So how did the FBI get involved? Did you contact them about the C-130?
No, what happened is that my sister, she was up in Surrey, which she actually exaggerates some when she talks. I spoke to a reporter up there.
Is this Pam Young?
Yeah, that's her. She spoke to a reporter up there, and she heard on the radio while we were riding out of there, getting out of there, that they thought it was a small plane, and that's what she told the gentleman. And then the gentleman called me, and we spoke at length with the reporter on the phone, and then shortly after that, FBI called. Yeah.
So they pay you a visit?
No, just called on the phone.
Talk to you on the phone?
Yeah.
And what did they tell you about the C-130?
They didn't acknowledge anything. They just, name, address, telephone number, that type of thing. And that was it. And, what I saw.
Do you have any idea how many feet the C-130 was above the AA or back behind it, above it?
No. I mean, it was...
It's probably tough to gauge.
That is. Granted, it's going to be setting up high enough where it doesn't hit the exhaust, from the jets,
Right.
But, I mean, he was shadowing it, and it probably would have been at a point where I think if there had probably been more time, he'd have laid the plane down on top of it. From what it looked like, but the guy it got to a point where he dropped that nose, and that was the end of it.
Okay. And you are pretty certain as far as which side of the gas station the plane was on?
I didn't. I'm not familiar with that area up there. All I know is where I was standing at, and which direction I saw the plane come from, which was my right to left. If you go up there, which I take it you guys have been up there, if you get in that back section there where that back road is, and get up into that lawn area, I think there's additional grave markers and stuff up there that you'll see, from right to left is the direction that the plane came.
Okay. Did you notice the AA bank at all or turn at all? Was it in a straight line?
It was a straight line.
Straight line.
I mean, it was, it was lined up ready to go.
Did you see it when you saw it? You said it nose down and gunned it.
Yeah.
So do you think that it was did it seem to you that it was at a descent when it hit the building, or had it leveled off?
It was at a descent. It actually came, it was flying level until I guess it got a certain distance out, and, it dropped the nose, and, it came in on an angle. It didn't level off.
Oh, it didn't. So did it come low and level?
No, it didn't. No, it came in this way.
Did you see the plane hit any light poles?
Not that I can recall. No. They say it did, I believe, but I didn't see that. You're sitting in a certain area with I guess some bushes up there, from that standpoint, from where we were at, and so if it did, I didn't know that.
Was it elevated where you were standing at all, or?
We're elevated over top of that road.
Okay.
That embankment up there, you're up on top of an embankment, and then it drops down to where that highway is, and then it goes across the street to where I guess that helipad is, and that section, I think there's a small parking section back there.
Okay.
I do know the biggest piece of material that I've seen was probably about the size of the hood of a car. That was all that was left.
Oh, so you did see some debris there?
Oh yeah, it was, and that was it.
Very little. Okay.
Yeah, it was gone.
Now you were in the military, is that right?
Back in 1980, 78, 79, 80, yeah.
Oh, okay. What was your position with the military?
I was an armor in the U.S. Army.
There are some very serious issues with Keith's account. One of the most obvious is his claim that he saw both planes for about 60 seconds. The 2006 NTSB released black box data reports that the plane was traveling 535 miles per hour, and most of the genuine witnesses we spoke with said they could only see the plane for 1 or 2 seconds. This made us real curious as to what Keith's point of view would have been from Arlington Cemetery. So after interviewing him, we went directly to the cemetery to film the exact location where Keith said he was and document his alleged point of view. It's clear that not only would Keith not be able to see the alleged impact that was supposedly a few inches above the ground into the first floor of the building, but we can only see one place where he might have been able to see the plane on the official flight path for about a fraction of a second. The notion he would be able to make out the airline or any details of the jet at all seems preposterous. But corroboration is the name of the game when it comes to validating eyewitness testimony. Fortunately, we were aware of the importance of Keith's account, so we have asked every other witness we spoke with about the C-130 or any second plane. Here's what they had to say.
There are reports of more than one plane that flew over. The official story says that there was a plane following it that looked like this. This is called a C-130. Yeah. Did the plane look like that to you? No. Did you see another plane? No. Plane like this. This is a C-130. Okay. A big military plane that was chasing it. Did you see that? No. Did the plane you saw, did it look like that? No. This is a C-130. Gray C-130. There are official reports that this plane was flying over the area. They called it to follow the 7 thing. So did you see anything like this right here, the C-130?
I personally didn't see that one.
Okay, did you see anything like that? All right. So this is a C-130. Did you see one like this?
No, it would have a turbine engine.
They say there were other planes in the area, Edward, that people saw. One was just like this one right here. That was supposedly following the plane. Did you see more than one plane, or just
only one?
Only one.
Yeah, only one.
No other planes. Okay, because other people said they saw two. No. There are reports that a plane just like this, C-130 with 2 engines. But there are reports that a C-130 just like this one right here, was shadowing the plane.
Didn't see it.
You didn't see any other plane?
Saw it. I mean, obviously I know it was in the area because I've read enough reports. I never saw it.
There was reports of a military cargo plane that circled the area, as well as an E-4B, which is the doomsday plane. CNN reported on that this year, flying over the no-fly zones in the area. Did you notice anything like that?
No, I didn't notice anything else.
So although virtually none of the people we have spoken with validated Keith's account, alleged witness USA Today editor Joel Sukerman did offer a little support for it. He doesn't identify the plane, but he claims a second plane peeled off immediately after the explosion. After pressing him to put it into seconds, he states that it was within 3 to 5 seconds of the event.
Just at that point, I heard another sound of a plane, again off to the west, and I looked up and I saw a plane kind of peeling off, and it was up much higher in the sky, and it was silhouetted against the sky at that point, so I couldn't really make out what it was. I looked back over to see what was going on at the Pentagon, and by the time I got back to the other plane, it was gone. I never saw it again. I'm not sure exactly what that was, but I'm very confident in what I saw as a passenger jet plane, silver, the American Airlines markings across the windows. Some people say they noticed immediately the AA on the tail. In that split second, I didn't see that, but it was very obvious that it was an American Airlines plane to me.
Okay, so you saw a second plane after the jet passed in front of you. How soon after the jet passed in front of you did you see the second plane?
It was almost immediate. After the plane passed in front, hit the wall, there was the explosion, and then I heard sound of another plane, and I looked up and saw it off to the west, and saw it was moving then quickly away from the scene. And I don't really know much more about that plane than that. It was high in the sky and it was silhouetted, so I didn't really get a very good view of it.
Your best guess, about how many seconds after it hit did you see the other plane?
3 to 5 seconds.
That soon? Okay.
Yeah, it was not long after that.
And what was its altitude approximately?
I wouldn't want to estimate. I don't have a good. It was much higher in the sky. than the passenger jet was. The passenger jet was at the point that I saw it coming across my field of vision. It was just above the car tops, essentially. It was just above the, you know, I don't know, 20 feet above the ground. It was very low at that point. And the topography of that highway there in relation to the Pentagon is it's up on a raised hill, then there's a grassy knoll, so to speak, leading down to a flat grassy area where there's a helipad, and then there's the wall of the Pentagon.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now you said you didn't get a good look at the second plane, but from what you remember, do you think it looked like this craft right here?
Mm-hmm. Hard to say.
Okay.
Hard to say. I just, you know, the only thing I have my memory bank about it was just seeing it sort of veer off at a fairly steep trajectory, a steep angle, and move away from the scene. But I just don't know what, I can't say what kind of aircraft it was.
Okay, yeah, this is a C-130. This is what it was reported to be. Mm-hmm. Now, did you see, when you say it veered off, did you notice if it veered off as it was facing the Pentagon to the right, or to the left, or to the right? Or did it just continue on right past the Pentagon?
No, it did not continue past the Pentagon to the east. It was not headed east. It was headed, I believe it was headed more north.
Okay, which would be to the left when you're facing the Pentagon then?
Yes, that's correct. So from where I am in traffic, it's straight away from me, right? So it's,
which
so
would
it's
actually,
the same direction I'm heading, but yeah, so heading north.
Which would actually be the direction you might see planes taking off from Reagan?
It could be depending on the runway.
And where they're coming from, which runway, okay.
Right.
Yeah, I know I've seen planes going that way before.
Right.
So while both Joel and Keith report a second plane at the time of the alleged impact, they describe completely different flight paths. Keith Wheelhouse claimed it veered away somewhere between the Sheridan and the Navy Annex, exactly where Edward Paik was.
Did you see more than one plane, or just
no, only one?
Only one?
Yeah, only one.
But if that was the case, it would be unlikely that Joel Sucherman could have seen it at all from his alleged location on Route 27. Of course, neither Joel nor Keith's claims can be validated by official sources or any of the other witnesses who were in the area that we could find. Plus, they are both completely contradicted by the 84 raids data, which does not have the C-130 shadowing or 3 to 5 seconds behind the alleged AA jet, and has it turning away before Joel Sucherman would have had a chance to see it at all. Were Joel and Keith's account meant to ambiguously act as cover for the flyover? We have documented other inconsistencies and suspicious details in Joel Sucherman's account in our presentation, The USA Today Parade. Sucherman's previous accounts have been highly publicized, and he was reported as one of the second plane witnesses, yet he would not identify the type of plane. Although almost all the people we spoke with did not see a second plane at all, and this detail is not reported in the vast majority of previously published accounts, here is a list of all known witnesses reported in the media as having seen the second plane. On September 17, 2001, Vin Narayanan wrote a very detailed blow-by-blow of the event as he claimed to have seen it. His account included seeing a second jet in the skies.
I hopped out of my car after the jet exploded, nearly oblivious to a second jet hovering in the skies.
We were able to get a hold of Vin on the phone to confirm his report. Here's what he had to say. So you were under an overhead sign, correct?
Yeah, I was under an exit. I was under an exit sign basically. I wasn't under the exit sign. I was just before the exit sign, but the exit sign was on the approach.
Okay, and you said the tail actually hit the overhead sign? It clipped it.
It clipped it.
It clipped it. Okay. Did you see it clip any light poles? Hit any light poles?
No, it didn't clip any light poles or anything like that.
Oh, okay. So it actually didn't clip any.
It didn't clip any light poles. It clipped the exit sign.
Just the exit sign. Okay. And markings, colors, obviously it was American Airlines.
It was an American Airlines. It was clearly an American Airlines jet.
Clearly.
Lights were out.
The lights were out, you said?
Lights were out.
Okay. And then you mentioned when you hopped out of your car, you saw a jet in the sky. Is that correct? Or was there another jet?
Yeah, there was another plane off in the distance.
Was it a plane? It said a jet in your account. Was it a jet or a plane that you can remember?
No, it was a jet.
Oh, it was definitely a jet.
Definitely a jet. It wasn't a small plane or anything like that.
Okay. Do you remember the color of that jet?
No.
No, okay. Do you remember what it was doing? Was it, up in the sky? Was it peeling away, getting away from the scene? Was it?
I don't remember. No.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you're in Massachusetts, right?
Yes, I am now.
Okay. Really quick, too, just how many seconds after the impact did you see that other plane? That second plane? The second jet, rather.
It was in the background. It wasn't, I think it was probably there within a couple minutes. I don't know the exact time frame, but I was aware of it in the background. It wasn't like the jet came screaming by or anything like that.
Now, there were other reports of other reporters and editors on the highway. Were you aware that there were other...
Oh, there had to be, because we were all stuck in traffic trying to get to work.
Ah, okay.
Joel Zuckerman was on the other side of the Pentagon. John O'Keefe was on the road somewhere. We were all stuck in traffic trying to get to work. So my guess is there probably would have been 2 to 3 dozen.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So you know John O'Keefe too. John O'Keefe was a editor or reporter with you guys, or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought he was an editor or managing editor for a lobbying magazine.
He is now.
Oh, he is now.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
He wasn't then.
Oh, okay. Okay. Got it.
O'Keefe was there, Zuckerman was there. Who else was there? Barb Slayton. There's a handful. There were a lot of us on the road. We were all stuck in traffic trying to get to work.
As one of the many reporters and editors from USA Today that have been listed as witnesses to this event on that tiny but critical less than a quarter-mile stretch of highway on Route 27, right in front of the Pentagon, Vin's account is quite interesting. What's most notable is how certain he is that it was a second jet as opposed to a plane like a C-130, which is a description that would serve as a better cover for the decoy jet. What's also notable is how Vin knew of then managing editor of a lobbyist lawyer magazine called Influence, John O'Keefe, who was yet another former USA Today employee as a news desk supervisor, who reports seeing a second plane, but like Keith Wheelhouse, he specifically refers to it as a C-130.
The first thing I did was pull over onto the shoulder, and when I got out of the car, I saw another plane flying over my head, and it scared me, because I knew there had been 2 planes that hit the World Trade Center, and I started jogging up the ramp to get as far away as possible. Then the plane, it looked like a C-130 cargo plane, started turning away from the Pentagon. It did a complete turnaround.
We also spoke with O'Keefe on the phone, but he declined to be recorded. He did confirm that he saw a second plane after he got out of his car before the overpasses south of the Pentagon on Route 27. Oddly, O'Keefe claims he saw the American airline jet for as much as 45 seconds. This would be quite impossible from his now confirmed alleged location and the reported speed of the plane, which would only grant him about a single second to see the plane, if even that. Also, O'Keefe claimed the C-130 came up 395 directly in back of him from the south, and this does not make sense with the pilot's statements.
Soon after the crash, within 30 seconds of the crash, I witnessed a military cargo plane, possibly a C-130, fly over the crash site and circle the mushroom cloud. My brother-in-law also witnessed the same plane following the jet while he was on the HOV lanes in Springfield. He said that he saw a jetliner flying low over the treetops near Seminary Road in Springfield, Virginia, and soon afterwards, a military plane was seen flying right behind it.
Alan Cleveland's account of witnessing the C-130 fly over the crash site 30 seconds after the explosion makes more sense with the pilot's statements as opposed to the shadowing claim. However, his view from the airport would be limited The C-130 did not actually circle the mushroom cloud, and most importantly, his secondhand account of his brother-in-law seeing the plane over Seminary Road in Springfield is irreconcilable with the pilot's statements of where he flew.
The only large fixed-wing aircraft to appear was a gray C-130, which appeared to be a Navy electronic warfare aircraft. He seemed to survey the area and depart on a westerly heading.
Scott Cook is the only reported witness who says he saw the C-130 after the explosion from across the river in D.C. He had one of the best views possible of the event from his office window at the edge of the river. He and his co-worker Ray were monitoring the skies because of the attacks in New York. His account is very important because it demonstrates how fast the event went down and how little people in D.C. would be able to see from across the river, showing you how easily the decoy jet could have flown away unnoticed. In this quote, he describes how little detail they would be able to make out of the scene.
From our office window across the river, the area behind the Pentagon is a mishmash of woods, office buildings, and Arlington Ridge, which is a minor range of hills just behind the Pentagon. From our vantage, something as small as a 757 zooming along at 250 to 300 knots was lost in the clutter.
In this quote, he perfectly illustrates how people in D.C. would have been distracted and not staring at the flight path at the exact moment of the explosion.
I was standing with my back to the window. Ray was facing me and spotted the explosion over my shoulder. Well, past my side, he's a lot shorter than me. We talked a lot about that day later, and Ray never saw the plane in flight. I turned. Rising up from the right center of the Pentagon's mass was a gigantic spherical orange mass, the flames oddly bright and vivid in the clear, direct sunlight. I stepped to the window and instinctively put my hand to the glass. Verl and Ray were quickly on either side of me. A few seconds after the explosion, the glass rattled and a dull boom shook the room.
Scott Cook's account is a perfect example of how easily the decoy jet could have slipped away unnoticed from anyone's point of view across the river. The distant, limited view, frequency of air traffic, and incredible spectacle of the explosion are all very important aspects that added to the success of this operation. Scott Cook's description of where the C-130 flew away from the event is further evidence that the raid's data is fraudulent. He says it flew past the minute-old smoke plume, headed towards the White House, and climbed rapidly right over the tidal basin. According to the raid's data, it never flew over the Pentagon or over the tidal basin, and Scott Cook would have likely never noticed it at all. It's clear that some genuine witnesses saw the C-130 come in and fly near the Pentagon nearly a minute after the explosion, while other suspect witnesses are deliberately suggesting it or some type of second plane or jet flew away from the Pentagon at the same time as the event. The mysterious white plane seen over the heart of Washington, D.C. around the time of the attack has recently leapt into the forefront of the 9/11 discussion as the result of a September 2007 news piece by Anderson Cooper on CNN. The piece heavily associates this plane with conspiracy theorists, but uses CNN footage from 9/11 to identify the plane, in essence proving its existence. They even go so far as to interview Vice Chairman of the 9/11 Commission, Lee Hamilton, about it, who had this to say.
When you're conducting a major investigation, you get thousands of things that come at you. You can't possibly sort through them all. This never rose to the level of a discussion within the commission. We, of course, heard the conspiracy theories about the president ordered the attack and the Defense Department was involved. We saw absolutely no evidence of that.
But 6 years later, the Pentagon, the Secret Service, and the FAA all say they, at least for public consumption, have no explanation of the giant plane over the president's house, just as the smoke began to rise across the river at the Pentagon.
The plane is a state-of-the-art presidential command center and is typically shrouded in secrecy. Some people suggest that its presence indicates foreknowledge or raises more questions why AA-77 wasn't intercepted. But the recently released raids data gives us two very important pieces of information exposing serious contradictions. For instance, the witnesses of this plane report a flight path that is irreconcilable with where the raids data says the plane flew. A researcher of the E-4B on the Pilots for 9/11 Truth Discussion Forum reported that former NBC News White House correspondent Bob Kerr had told him that the radar track appears to be too far north of where he was located when he saw the E-4B. He was in Lafayette Park near the various news camera crews who also got some pretty close shots of the E-4B heading east, but the radar shows the eastward pass about 8 miles away from there. As stated earlier, another vital piece of information gained from the raids data separating the E-4B from the decoy jet is that the data shows the only candidate for the E-4B taking off from Andrews Air Force Base at 9:43, while the attack had already taken place at least 5 minutes prior. This is very important when compared to news reports because ABC reported at 9:40, before they even knew of the attack at the Pentagon, that there was a jet circling the White House.
The White House, of course, has leapt to the forefront of people's concern this morning, and there is a plane circling the White House at the moment, and they're clearing the grounds there. That's a report which may be misleading in that it may presume an attack, whereas we just discovered a moment ago that what we had with an additional airplane in New York airspace was a security operation.
According to the government-provided radar data, the only candidate for the E-4B didn't even take off for another 3 minutes, and we know that National Ground Stop was at 9:26. So it's quite likely that the jet ABC is referring to is the decoy jet that Steve Chaconis saw approach from the east of the river, that Monty Belger reported to Norman Mineta, and that Colin Scoggins was referring to on the NORAD tapes. We know for certain the plane they are all referring to cannot be Flight 77 because the NTSB black box data never has the plane over the DC area at all. At this point, it is clear that the decoy jet was flown in the same skies as the E-4B, so people would think of them as one and the same, or certainly confuse the two when reported later. It would be thought of as a benevolent, secretive government jet that was simply launched due to the attack, but kept under wraps for security reasons. Add that to the stories of the second plane shadowing AA-77 and veering away immediately after the explosion, and there would be plenty enough explanation floating around for a plane that was seen flying over or away from the building. But the cover-up didn't stop there. In the Journal of Emergency Medical Services, or GEMS report, there is a reference to a very peculiar detail.
As Engine 16 and Truck 3 pulled up, a uniformed officer waved them off, telling them, "Get the F out of here! There's a plane coming in!" Fortunately, no plane crashed into the White House. One reason for this false alarm may have been a split-second decision by an air traffic controller. When the hijacked plane turned into the Pentagon, it was on a collision course with an airliner leaving Reagan National Airport as scheduled. Without the data from Flight 77's transponder and not knowing the intention of the hijacked plane, the controller ordered the departing aircraft to take a hard right into the protected airspace over the White House.
Since we know that no departure could have been diverted from Reagan just before the 9:38 attack due to the 9:26 National Ground Stop, it is reasonable to suggest that they are actually referring to the decoy jet as it is flying away from the Pentagon. It makes sense that they would hide it in plain sight, since they could always confuse its existence with departures out of Reagan or any of the ambiguous mystery second planes or jets. This amazing eyewitness statement claims that people actually saw a plane in DC airspace as low as the Washington Monument.
I talked to a number of average people en route who said that they saw the plane hovering over the Washington Mall area at an altitude lower than the height of the Washington Monument.
People in DC wouldn't be instantly aware of the attack on the Pentagon in Arlington, and so could easily be convinced later on that the plane they saw low over DC is what reportedly hit the building, even though it was really flying away. As mentioned earlier, the NORAD tapes reveal that at 9:35, Colin Scoggins reported an aircraft that was reported later as AA-77 southeast of the White House.
Hunter 4D is coming out. Can I help you?
Latest report, aircraft VFR 6 miles miles southeast of the White House.
6 miles southeast of the White House?
Yep, east. He's moving away?
Southeast of the White House?
Aircraft is moving away.
Moving away from the White House?
Yeah.
Okay, but what, he was a DVFR?
We believe we just know it's a VFR aircraft. We're not sure who it is. If you want to hold on a second.
Okay, copy.
Have people down there looking.
Okay, copy.
Where was his at position? 6 southwest. 6 southwest of the White House, deviating away.
Deviating away. You don't have a type aircraft, so you don't know who he is.
Nothing. We're in Boston, so I have no clue. Hopefully someone who's watching would have a better information for you.
Scoggins updated the position to be southwest of the White House, which would make perfect sense as the plane looped around over Arlington as reported by Steve Chaconis. However, this is completely irreconcilable with the official NTSB and RAID's data flight path, but makes perfect sense with what Steve Chaconis, Lieutenant Colonel Steve O'Brien, ABC News, and Monty Belger report. Plus at 9:35 it's too early to have been the E-4B, which had to have taken off at 9:43 according to the RAID's data. The E-4B and the C-130 are both identified in the RAID's data as the only possible options that remotely fit with the official narrative. But when scrutinized against real-world evidence, such as the initial news reports and official statements, the initial story is irreconcilable with what is being released in the official data many years later. Scoggins wasn't the only air traffic controller to report an unidentified plane east of the river. Major Kevin Nisipany did as well.
Okay, Foxy, I got an aircraft 6 miles east of the White House. Get your fighters there. East of the White House right now.
Scoggins' account of a plane 6 miles southeast of the White House was at 9:35 and 40 seconds, and Nisipany's account of a plane 6 miles east of the White House was at 9:36 and 20 seconds. So we can't say for sure whether it's Scoggins or Nisipany that is referring to the decoy jet, but both accounts are completely irreconcilable with the official flight path. Between the NORAD tapes, the news reports, and the eyewitnesses, the amount of evidence that the plane that was supposed to be AA-77 was nowhere close to the NTSB flight path is overwhelming. The only logical conclusion is that the government controlled and released 2006 NTSB data, as well as the 2007 84 RAIDS data, has been manipulated to show a fabricated flight path, and that the decoy jet was meant to blend in and be confused with other planes in the area in subsequent reports, as well as on that day to NORAD and eyewitnesses. The north of the Sitco flight path could have very well been deliberate, so the decoy jet could be more easily written off as a second plane to anyone who may have seen it fly over or away from the Pentagon. Don't be surprised if all of this information has you a bit confused. The plot was designed that way on purpose. We will now try to break it down in as simple terms as possible by explaining exactly what Citizen Investigation Team believes the implications are. We've explained to you how dubious witnesses, the media, and government officials have ambiguously referenced a fictitious second plane jet in general and blended this with reports of the very real C-130 and E-4B for confusion. This was done as cover for the decoy jet that flew north of the former Sitco and over or away from the Pentagon, timed perfectly with the explosion. Most of the second plane witnesses were ambiguous as to what kind of plane it was and details about where it flew. One second plane witness directly stated there was a jet, and others implied the second plane was fast enough to keep up with the fast-moving AA flight, which in turn would suggest or imply the second plane was a jet. It wasn't until C.I.T. started asking the hard questions that the specific information about the various flight paths and timing exposing fatal contradictions came to light. Since all of the witnesses we found on the street didn't see an alleged second plane, and because all of the contradictions between the official data and the C-130 pilot himself, we believe the very limited list of the second plane witnesses contains some complicit operatives who are deliberately lying to support the official story. there is very little supporting the notion that there were ever two planes in the same airspace over the Pentagon area at the same time of the attack, and this claim serves as perfect cover for the decoy jet flying over or away from the building. We believe that Lieutenant Colonel Steve O'Brien and his crew were unaware dupes who were kept in the dark and deliberately ordered to take off at a controlled moment to have a timed interaction with the decoy jet. The fact that they allegedly took off 6 minutes after National Ground Stop, and the fact that he claims that they were not even told of the attacks in New York is strong evidence supporting this notion. O'Brien explains how he was not even aware the nation was under attack in this quote.
The first thing we heard on there was, "We're now hearing about a second plane hitting the World Trade Center." That was not what we were expecting to hear. We were expecting to hear about an airplane impacting the Pentagon, and they haven't even mentioned that yet, says O'Brien. They're just talking about a second plane hitting the World Trade Center, and the light goes on. It's like, oh my God, the nation's under attack.
The second airplane hit the World Trade Center at 9:03. National Ground Stop was at 9:26. According to the raids data, the C-130 took off at 9:32, and the violent event at the Pentagon was at 9:37. Why weren't O'Brien and his crew grounded, and why weren't they informed of the attacks in New York? We believe the C-130 pilot was deliberately set up to look like he was involved with the operation. Some have asserted that the C-130 was used as command control and guided the plane into the building. Since none of the previously unknown witnesses on the street that we spoke with even saw the C-130, we have found no evidence to support such claims. This excerpt from a Daily Press article regarding Keith Wheelhouse's account gives the impression of involvement by suggesting the C-130 was, quote, guiding the AA jet.
Wheelhouse believes it flew directly above the American Airlines, as if to prevent the two planes from appearing on radar, while at the same time guiding the jet toward the Pentagon.
Any alleged witnesses who placed the plane directly over or immediately behind the AA jet are by default promoting this conspiracy theory and are ambiguously acting as cover for the flyover. We believe that Flight 77 was never in the area at all after it went missing as early as 8:56, according to the 9/11 Commission. We believe the data with the official flight paths that wasn't released until many years after the event was simply fabricated. Anyone who contradicts the official flight path can now be written off as having witnessed a different plane or simply written off. The official flight path was unofficially first depicted in October 2001 in an ABC episode of 2020. It was then officially referenced during the 9/11 Commission hearings in this animation. Note the deceptive angle, making it difficult to tell exactly where the loop was located. Before the NTSB officially released the data in 2006, more than one source had reported a flight path more similar to what we have determined based on the new evidence we have presented. National Geographic reported something quite similar in this animation they made for their program, Seconds from Disaster, and again in this radar track image. Ironically, this flight path image is likely the one that got the most attention before the release of the NTSB data. It was created by Air Force navigator Steve Kopel in a piece from 2002. He has admitted it was mostly an unsupported guess on his part and that it was not meant to be a precise or authoritative description. Nevertheless, it would be cited for years by many, mostly in reference to the notion that alleged hijacker pilot Hani Hanjour was headed straight for the head brass of the Pentagon, including Rumsfeld's office, but supposedly executed an acrobatic maneuver to hit the other side that was comparatively unoccupied. This is actually a truth movement myth, as the exact flight path depicted by Steve Kopel is not supported by any hard evidence, and there is nothing to suggest that the loop itself is an acrobatic maneuver. So while not entirely accurate, The folklore flight path that was eventually shot down with the 2006 released NTSB data has turned out to be closer to the truth than the official data when the entire body of evidence is scrutinized. With the incredible amount of data we have presented showing that the plane flew over Washington, D.C., this cannot be denied. White House spokesman Ari Fleischer further supported the notion that not only did the plane fly over D.C., but that there were two flight paths, as quoted in the September 21, 2001 CBS News article.
Top government officials have suggested that American Airlines Flight 77 was originally headed for the White House and possibly circled the Capitol building. CBS News transportation correspondent Bob Orr reports that's not what the recorded flight path shows. 8 minutes before the crash, at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, radar tracked the plane as it closed to within 30 miles of Washington. Sources say the hijacked jet continued east at a high speed toward the city, but flew several miles south of the restricted airspace around the White House. At the White House Friday, spokesman Ari Fleischer saw it a different way. That's not the radar data that we have seen, Fleischer said, adding, the plane was headed towards the White House.
Steve Chacona's testimony is the crucial piece of this puzzle that ties everything together, undeniably proving how this deception was carried out. The mainstream media published witness accounts of a plane impact have been for the most part misrepresented. Just because somebody saw a plane and heard or saw the explosion does not mean they saw the plane hit the building. Our extensive eyewitness analysis will be presented in detail in the Pentagon Researchers Edition, but we can tell you that out of all the previously published witness accounts, only about 30 would physically have been in a position to be able to see the alleged impact. A good portion of them were right on Route 27 North, putting them in a prime position to be fooled by a fast-moving jet followed by a massive explosion. So while many people would have been easily duped by this military sleight-of-hand deception, and the perpetrators covered their tracks with the second plane cover story, we will never know what people really first reported on that day because all of the 911 calls and transcripts were quickly confiscated and permanently sequestered. This is a very important point that implicates a cover-up. 911 call tapes are part of the public record and typically available for review. The tapes from New York have been released, but not from Arlington, which shows they have something to hide. C.I.T. has exhausted every effort possible to obtain the tapes, but the current captain of the Arlington County Communications Department, John Crawford, told us he does not think they will ever be released by the FBI. The fact remains, multiple witnesses saw the plane approach on the north side of the former C.I.T. gas station, with one stating it pulled up into an ascent right before the Pentagon. The fact also remains that since it was on the north side of the C.I.T., that it had to pull up into an ascent, since the north side flight path approach is 100% irreconcilable with the highly questionable and admittedly counterintuitive physical damage, the flight data recorder, and the security gate footage. The information we have presented so far already proves beyond a reasonable doubt that the official story cannot be reality. The truth movement needs to re-embrace the evidence surrounding the Pentagon attack as a clear smoking gun proving 9/11 was an inside job.